This goes beyond just a murder. Beyond everything I believe.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back for another episode of Under the Banner of Heaven, starring Andrew Garfield. This is episode 3. I have my co-host here, Lucas. What's going on, man?
Nothing much. By episode 6, I think I'll have the name of this down.
You keep saying Under the Sun or Under something.
Yeah. Under the Banner of Heaven just does not ring off as the name of the... I don't know why. It's too much stuff called Under the Sun. And every time I think about it, I think of Under the Sun. And it's not even a sun in the word.
I think it's the backdrop, honestly. I think the backdrop, every bit of promotional, you see him at a sunset, you see him like in a wide open space, so it just kind of flows. And it's shorter. Like, it's a long name. Like, Under the Banner of Heaven is a very long name.
Yeah, but it makes sense. Like, and the book is named this, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know why I get this wrong. But Under the Banner of Heaven, episode 3, Surrender.
Yes, sir. So with the last episode, we didn't know what was going to happen to Bill. Because last time we saw a little peephole, and Bill his eye was in it.
Yep.
See the gun pointed out, and you're like, oh crap, we might have lost Bill. I think one thing I liked about this episode is there was so much unpredictability about where the narrative was going. From everything, how they set up that whole sequence of like Andrew Garfield going through the woods and, you know, having his other deputies there and him not knowing whether or not Bill was alive. I love that setup. Like
the sound mixing, and that is something I don't talk about often, but dag nabbit, if the sound mixing wasn't amazing, and the score as he's running through the woods, and you just hear a little bell in the background constantly as the music is thumping and getting louder and louder as he's coming to where his partner is, was great.
Right.
That whole setup was great.
It was so much uncertainty of who and what was around the area, because you didn't know. I mean, us as a viewer, we don't know how many people are in that house. We don't know who's searching the perimeter. We just know every little move they make, and the bells ringing off. Then you see random people popping out of the woods, and you're like, and then you see the little girl. And then the little girl gets, captured, and Andrew starts to kind of question her and starts talking to her. And then you realize, oh, whoa, what is really happening right now?
Exactly. I mean, when the best way to put it is when you come to the realization who these people are, that's when the episode kicks to another level.
Right. Because it's revealed that her Papa Sam, who is actually one of Macaulay Culkin's younger brothers that was in Signs. If you've never seen Signs, he's that brother.
Swing away.
Swing away. He goes off in this. He is not only got a few screws loose, we don't know how tied to this murder he really truly is. And he does not divulge any information at all from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode. But all we knew is that when they did get inside, we saw somebody in there and they ran out and they missed them. Some kind of way they missed them. And he did not reveal who or why. He just said that what's coming next is there's more people on a list. And now they realize there's a list. Also, Bill is alive. So their conversation when Bill's alive, he's just sitting there. He's like, "Oh man, you're out here. Thank you for coming here." And like, it was interesting. It was interesting watching them as partners kind of rant about the situation, even though they were both concerned. You could show that they respect and care about each other. It was really interesting to watch.
It was one of the few, and it's weird to say in that sequence, one of the few light-hearted moments is when he comes around that bend and he sees Bill right there. Like that was an extreme for this episode, which is extremely disturbing and dark. That was like the light moment before you get to the seriousness of what was going on.
Right. Speaking of, I guess, the darkness of this, you get the shroud of some of what it's weird. It's so weird, man. Like the closer and closer you start to get to present day, and you start to understand, Alan and Brenda's wedding and how that went about. And you start to understand more about the other family members. There's a scene, I think this is the right episode, where Dan, like he's helping everybody out at the van.
Oh, at the wedding.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that whole situation and how Sam Worthington had to jump in and then the dad's still ready to square off. I was like, this is some sick stuff.
I mean,
go ahead.
I'm about to say, not even that, just going back a little bit, that at the time when this story is being told, it's being told to Andrew's character by a young girl.
Right.
Who witnesses this happen, who's the same young girl who escaped from the house.
Right.
And she's witnessing this happen to him.
Exactly.
And the guy said, did it give him lashings? And she said, right in front of us. We saw it.
Right.
And you saw Dan's willingness to not betray his dad and just take it.
Right.
And it took for Ron to approach the situation like, no, this is not right. But this is the second confrontation that Ron and the fathers had.
It's true.
So you kind of wonder at this point, like, where's the family leaning to that they're constantly having this conflict with one another?
The weirder thing was that for some reason, I felt like it was a lot more of gap of time that it happened. And the fact that this little girl witnessed this and she's still just a little girl, I'm like, this is eclipsed in less than 2 years, maybe 3 tops.
Maybe, yeah, somewhere in that area.
And I'm like, dude, how did it go this far so fast? And I think that the conversation with Robert, when he realized, 1, what was going on, 2, the revelation that Brenda is dead, like he was like, he couldn't stand it. Like he really couldn't stand it. He was like, look, I ain't had nothing to do with it. I can't believe it's gotten this far. I don't know what's going on. But then he starts to spill more information. Because I can't remember in this episode if Alan had that much of a dialogue.
Alan, they had a little bit of dialogue between
Pyrie
and Alan. It was a little dialogue, not a lot, because a lot of this was focused on his conversation with Sam.
Yeah.
And the list. And when he brings up Brenda being dead and a child being dead, Sam's reaction isn't that I didn't know they were dead. His reaction was they deserve to die.
Right.
And I think that's what threw everything in the tailspin with Ron, because he didn't know Robert, because he didn't know anything about it. He didn't know that they were dead or anything of this nature. Then we get the mention of a list of people who must pay for the things that they've done. And I think between all of that, we're left as the audience with a question of, 1, who formulated this list?
Right, exactly.
And then, I mean, even to go back a little further, once the little girl tells the story, then that's something that I'll let you give an opinion on. Once the little girl tells a story, and she talks about who's the leader of the family, and they ask her, he said, is your grandfather? And she says, no. And she said, the leader was picked after that happened. So after he gets beaten and all that other stuff, we get him, Dad, praying with his daughters, and he hears from God or their prophet. I don't think it was God. It may have been their prophet. That he's to lead the family. What do you think about just that transition? Because when that happens, it seems like eventually the family just falls in line with that thinking.
It's really weird. I think that the family conform because they don't want to cross the dad, and they see Dan, not willing to cross the dad. And I think Dan, honestly, I think emotionally he's traumatized. and he doesn't really know what to do, just based on the whole tax situation and his handling of it and what it's really doing. And then he has this moment where he gets this revelation and he just continuously repeats it over and over and over again. Like it was really off-putting. It didn't feel like it was a spirit-led thing. It felt like, honestly, like he was manipulating his perspective on what he thought it should be. And his wife was just chanting right along with him. And I can't remember if Robert wasn't there, I don't think. But I do know somebody else was there and it was also going along with the whole entire thing. But it was just, but no, my opinion is I think that they were already signed off on Dan being the person that was going to uphill and lead. The problem is that they're not seeing Dan like mentally breaking down. Like the wife is seeing it, probably Brenda's seeing it, but nobody else is really seeing like, yeah, he is unhinged. And the sad thing is that what's the older brother's name? Ron really he probably wouldn't know what to do. Honestly, like what is he supposed to say to Dan? Like, yeah, man, like I think we need to have a talk. Like, let's try to figure out what's going on with the family. Let's try to protect our faith. Like, because if he does something like that, it's gonna put Dan in a place where it feels like Ron is trying to take what's his or what's supposed to be left over to him, irregardless of how older he is. So they've never had a conversation. Dan's never had a conversation with Ron, really, up until Ron tried to protect him from those lashings. So I don't know. It's very fascinating to me.
Yeah, I would say, is it a breakdown or is it actually that Dan has a stronger belief in their religion than Ron does? Because for me, it's coming across that Ron, while a believer, it seems like the sect that Brenda was raised in fits more of Ron than their families do. So
yeah,
it almost comes across as that he just doesn't believe the way his family did. So when Dad's going through that and he's having his spiritual awakening and he's chanting it over and over again, I paid more attention to the emotion on his face while he was chanting it. Because it was like something was coming over him, and with every chant was him reaffirming what he was saying.
Yeah, it was kind of like he was validating what he was receiving. I guess that's the best way of kind of putting that. Yeah, I can understand that perspective. It's just so weird because if that's the fact, you got to also talk about when Pyrie goes and visits his bishop, I don't know if it's his pastor or if his bishop. I don't know. I think it's his bishop, right?
About the same.
Yeah. Well, when he goes and visits him, he initially kind of talks about how, his mom, and we'll get to that in a second, because his mom, that whole situation, especially with his wife, that's a whole different thing. And it also goes and connects in with some of the stuff that, Alan was telling him about how they treat their wives. But that's a whole nother subset. We'll get to that in a second. But when Pyrie was kind of talking about, what do you know about, like, sins being forgiven by blood? Like blood being spilt to forgive a sin. And like the pastor, he did this weird thing where he was kind of like, well, I don't research everything. I'm not a historian, but I'll tell you what, you don't go digging into the past. And I was like, whoa, hold on, homie. Like, and he looked at Pyrie, and Pyrie was like, wait, are you saying? He's like, look, you need to let this go, son. In so many words. And I'm like, so the foundation of what Pyrie has been so devout in and believing, he really doesn't even know. He doesn't. I mean, foundationally, they don't really understand the depths of where this all started and how deep this really goes. Because to me, it alluded that the bishop was like, yeah, it's definitely. I just am not going to talk about it because it's going to be off-putting.
I would say that's definitely one of the key functions of. That's one of the key points that the bishop was attempting to make to him.
Yeah.
Was, in all honesty, how far do you, when it becomes to your religion and your faithfulness, how far do you want to dig into how possibly everything started?
Mm.
And then when they do tell a story of, is it Joseph Smith? I want to make sure I get him, the lead prophet of, Joseph
So,
Smith.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
When that's when they were telling the story when he was talking to Samuel about it and about following the prophet's following and the things that he had to do, and you hear Samuel say, "I'm not willing to turn I'm not willing to turn the cheek like he was." Basically, meaning
Right.
I'm not willing to go through the things he went through because I didn't think it was right. So we're seeing a complete conflict of religion here
Yeah.
and how you view it. So
Right.
one thing this is going to, I think, help a lot of people to realize, and it's something that a lot of people don't. A lot of people, I think, assume that all Mormons were the same.
Mm.
And I'm thinking this show is showing people that that's not the case, as is not the case with any form of religion.
Right.
Like, you're not going to, people don't dig into the history of Christianity because you would, if you did, it could terrify you a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the bishop is basically saying. Like, basically, maybe it's not best to look into everything. But is that because the bishop feels that he, at that moment, especially because what's going on with his mother, is having a weak moment in his faith? And if you dig deeper, that weaker moment can grow.
It's hard. It's hard because this is the thing. Say, I went to my pastor, right? And I was like looking at something in Old Testament. And I'm like, well, wait, how does this work, in as a perspective when it comes to like a woman? And like my pastor's like, oh, well, that's Old Testament. Like it's a different era, but then I'm like, well, wait, but we profess to believe the word in and of itself as a whole. And my pastor's like, yeah, I don't know. And it because that's the way that it kind of comes off for me. It's more so like a shrug off versus like, okay, well, I mean, this is what it is. Like, do you want to pray about it? And if this is bringing you discomfort, let's talk about it. That ain't what he said. It was almost as though it was a part of it that he didn't want to divulge the information about. And that's where it kind of came off. It wasn't so much like, oh, well, I think this is kind of making you feel uncomfortable. I think you're wavering a little bit. Let's make sure it was more so like, if you continue to dig into this, there might be ramifications of it.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like to me.
No. I agree 1,000%. But that's the comparison. That's why I made the comparison with, unfortunately, Christianity. We literally, in the world, we literally have a city that is the most protected city in the world. Why is it protected? Because it protects a religion. I mean, again, I just don't think people. I think this is an awesome scene between him and the pastor because it shows one thing that everybody always knows. Every religion has its secrets that clearly they don't want to get out. But here is someone having a moment of weakness in his religious beliefs and him attempting to work it out, and him going to the person he thinks should be able to work it out for you.
Right.
But unfortunately, he put a lot of weight behind, and I wish I would remember if that was his pastor, if it was a bishop of the church, if it was a historian of their religion, because all of those are different things. They're not, at times they will not be the same thing.
Right.
And if you go to your pastor, if you go to anyone in a religious sect, anyone who you believe is someone who should be able to give you counseling on certain things, if the subject that you're asking them about leads to their own weakness, they are not going to allow you to go down that path.
Right.
And that's what I saw there. Unlike when he talked to Samuel about it, Samuel had no issue telling you everything.
He didn't care. He could care less. He was like, look, I am all the way in, and this is where it is.
See,
This is what I was taught.
But that's what makes that conflict so grand. It's because clearly the sect that Andrew follows, we understand that's broken off completely from the sect that the family follows.
Right.
So you get the conflict here because Andrew is only asking these questions based off of what he's getting from Samuel.
Right. It's almost as though there's another denomination of Mormons that, I mean, not that they've rallied behind their own prophet necessarily, but almost. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know the whole story, and I don't know the full true life story either. I'm trying to withhold from reading about it because I want to, authentically go through the process of seeing this.
Well, they do a decent job. I wouldn't say it's the first episode where they bring up the break off.
Yeah, they do talk about that a little bit.
So you can understand okay, this is a different. Technically, for us, it would be considered a different denomination.
Yeah.
Of the Mormon Church, and this is what we believe. This is what they believe. I think I said at the time the first thing that popped into my head was possibly the difference between Roman Catholics and Catholics, or Orthodox Jews and people who practice Judaism, but they're just not Orthodox, so they don't follow the complete learning and practices of stuff. I think that's the split here with those two sects, and because of his religion and him getting now a different perspective on his religion from someone who seems to be so passionate about it, it's making him question his place in it.
Yeah,
and that is the issue. That's the most interesting part of not only this episode, but of this series so far.
Yeah. Because now we'll kind of go a subset over to the wife, because I don't know if he's choosing not to let the wife know what's going on with the case or anything, because it seems like she's kind of oblivious to how much this is weighing a heavy toll on him, because she's been trying to focus on preparing for the girls' orientation and preparing for the church to come out of the house, trying to watch over his mom. And his mom goes missing in the middle of the event, and she is freaking out. Like she literally was stressed out the whole entire episode because she couldn't find him. And then it just happened to be that one of the church members was one of the bus drivers. He was found her, took care of her, and it's so interesting because their community is so faith-based.
Yep,
they're all so interconnected that it's scary to me, because I don't know how many of them believe the way that the Laffertys believe, or how much they are, what we presume to be, Pyree's family's beliefs. I really don't know. I don't know how connected, because there's so many people that are connected to this religion that I don't know. But either way, when it got down to the conversation with him and the wife, and it was nighttime, he was going back out, and she got pissed at him. She was like, you're not here, you're not doing this, and it went down to something he was telling her to do. What did he tell her to do? I can't remember what it exactly was, but she was pissed about it because it was almost like she had to fall in line. He was like, this isn't a request, this is an order. This isn't an option, this isn't a request. And she took issue with it. She said, I'll fall in line because of this, but just know, I'm the only one that's really got your back, or whatever, something to that nature. But I can't remember what the reality of it was. But it goes in connection to the conversation he had with Robert, the conversation he had with Samuel, and the conversation he had specifically with Alan. Because Alan was like, you see what we do to our wives, what we put them through, the box. I think he described it as the cage within a cage that we put them in through, being moms, being bearers of children. And what this does to them as individuals, we don't even care or take that into account, because then they show how they ended up, how Brenda and Alan ended up having kids, why that happened. But really quick, what would you take away from the mom and I guess Pyre's mom and that whole situation?
It just played upon for Pyre at the time. It played upon the family dynamic that I think he's always questioned in a way, it seems like. Because I think the moment he met the Laffertys, I think he questioned the way his relationship worked. And then it can lead you to question, am I doing this the right way? Is it supposed to be another way? But if I wanted it to be another way, or if I'm stuck in my wife's growth. As Isla said, when they were sitting at that table, where he said, with the kid and everything, that's when I started noticing the trap that I put her in.
Right.
But Andrew's characters never noticed that before.
He never has. He ain't thought about it.
Yeah, it comes as a back thought that he would be doing something of that nature. So again, it just leads to questions about the way he's gone about running his family,
right?
And if it's right. Again, this is as anything. This is a show about a test of your faith.
Yeah,
and that was a big moment for a test of his faith. Again, with the mom escaping. The thing that freaked me out the most is when the neighbor said, "Oh, good thing you were in church because we kind of knew about this." It seemed so creepy the way he was saying it, though.
Right.
Like it was something underlined there that made the wife uncomfortable.
Right.
And again, it's this community. Again, in the way it's at least portrayed on the show, the Mormon community is extremely tight. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a community that is that tight and everyone knows everyone, when do you get a break?
Or worse, if you fall out of it. Say you fall out of your faith or you start to stumble, like how do they perceive you? How do they treat you? Because to me, the little blip was like, okay, well, I'm glad you guys are still so faith-centered. Because if not, I don't know what would have happened, kind of thing. And I'm like, what does that mean? And
we would have looked out for her.
That's what it kind of felt like.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. And that's crazy. That's crazy. Like just thinking about that from that point of view is strange, man.
Hey. Again, I feel for a show like this or any other show when it gets to these deep meanings, you have to find a way to put yourself in that situation. Yeah. And think about maybe at times where stuff like that has happened, but we were young at the time and we didn't notice it. Like, I remember going to church and hearing about the people who were no longer a part of it. Yeah. And they weren't talked about in the best way. Mm-hmm. So this is, again, it's another play on that. It's to show you that as much as we want to act like all this stuff is different, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But this is just this is just a tighter knitted community that clearly, by him saying that, let you know that they would have not second thought about her if they still wasn't in the church as heavy as they were.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something else that I was gonna bring up. So when he was talking to the pastor about his mother's condition, and I can't remember if Pyre alluded to the fact that his mother said to him she no longer wanted to live. Like basically when she was clear and she was like, I can't continue to live like this. I want to be with my husband. He brought that up to the pastor. And I think Pyre initially was kind of going on lines of like, maybe I should, kind of have her in a home, but then this is what she feels. And then the way the pastor was like, I don't know if it's the pastor bishop because I don't want to get that wrong, but he basically said, well, that's what medication's for. God bless us with medication. Matter of fact, women need medication. They're more susceptible to yada 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 yada. And I was like, hold up, dog. And I get, because I know there's some people that have that same mindset, but it was just the way that he said it. I was like, is that what they all believe?
So
Straight
matter
up?
of factly.
Right.
See, but then with Pyrie, am I saying his name right? Pyrie?
Yeah, Pyrie.
Okay. With Pyrie, do you believe because of what's going on with his mother, it's giving him a different perspective of his wife?
What do you mean? What sense?
Think about it. The pastor, deacon, bishop, I don't know, his religious leader tells him women need this stuff. Almost dismissing her completely because she's a woman. I think he feels a different way because that's his mother than possibly the times he's possibly dismissed his wife. Because it's not going to hit the same way to you. You take extra offense by him dismissing his mom and her feelings that way, but he may have never thought the amount of times he's dismissed his wife and her feelings.
Right.
So I think that it's also giving him a different perspective, because this just to say that's what drugs are made for, which one is true, but to say, and for women especially, like, wow.
Right. It was just the way it felt so. And then on top of that, it compounded with his whole conversation with Pyrie about their history of their beliefs. Because it'd be one thing if, like you said, like my pastor said to me, like, yeah, well, make sure you give her this, make sure she's getting good treatment. I'll be praying it's gonna work out. And then I asked about, you know what, foundationally, I'm a little worried about this section of like my faith. Like, can we talk about this? And like, yeah, I'm not a historian. Just don't dig into it. It's okay. Oh, like straight up, if you are a longtime church member and your pastor said he doubled down on one thing he already said, and then he talked about this, you would start to question like whether or not
you're following the right denomination.
Right, but I think it's worse for him because he puts his faith behind every action he does, down to even his family's protection, his protection going as a cop. Like if his faith is not there and his belief isn't there, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird because it's compromising the case a lot of the time, but it also is allowing him to keep moving forward and to be able to mentally be sane enough to do it.
But it's also breaking him
at the same time.
Yeah. Because if you're having this challenge in faith and you're noted and you have people in front of you who also technically represent your faith just in a different way, you kind of questioned it. Is it a better way?
Yeah. You can tell that he's opening up with a lot more to Bill. Like, I think Bill, did he offer him a cigarette or something of that nature?
Oh no, what he's been opening up to Bill since Bill got him to eat that French fry.
Yeah. And like, and he looked at Bill and he didn't say he wanted it, but he looked at him, smiled, and laughed. But I was like, normally, I think based on the first episode version of Pyrie, he would have been like, man, dude, don't tempt me with that, man. I don't want that. He didn't even say it. Like, he just was like, And I'm not saying that Pyrie is conforming. I think that right now he's in this weird situation because honestly, now that I think about it, probably the reason why he hasn't told his wife what's going on and how mentally he is, if the pastor or the deacon or the bishop, whatever he is, perceives women that way, then the other thing would be opposite, that no, you have to be the rock, you got to be sustainable, you got to be this, and you don't need to divulge these information to your wife because they're here for here. Versus us, that if you're a married man, for a fact, like, your wife holds you down, like she got your back. So a lot of those burdens that you have can be lifted off of you, so you can keep pushing forward. So you divulge some of those things to your wife, and also it helps your relationship. Because if he would have said to his wife, you know what, look, my faith is really being tested right now. Like, this is what's really happened. I can't divulge who or why, but this is really bad. And I fear for our daughters. I fear for our home. And I don't know how to deal with this. Can you pray with me? Just something like that. It would build so much of his relationship with his wife down to his daughters, but he's not divulging any of that. And so there's a disconnect. Like, she feels as though he's insensitive to her and he don't care. And he's like, yo, I got way too much going on to do.
Yep.
And it's tearing his marriage apart, basically, because of, I guess, the way that they are supposed to handle marriage. Because I guess it goes into the whole Brenda situation. That whole wedding, and they were just sitting there talking, and they're back and forth. And I'm like, can everybody hear what's going on? Like, what they're talking about?
Uh-huh.
Because the little girl's mom, she was at the wedding as well. And you get a little bit, because she even talked down to her daughter. It was like, what did she say about her daughter? She said something. She was like, she's not having her faith. Like, she needs to be course corrected.
Yep.
And something like that. And then that's when it alluded to Brenda that she was the same way. And that's when Pyrie got an understanding that the little girl knew Brenda. Yep. And then we got the story of Brenda and Alan's wedding. And that whole thing was just, I don't know, man. It was weird. It was offsetting to me. It was off-putting to me. And it felt like, down to the point when Alan was in prison because of his brothers setting him up, and Alan kind of basically reverting back to what he was taught. Like, look, man, I need you to take a dime for this. I need you to kind of like fall back. And she was like, but wait, I can still do this. She's like, nah, but I really kind of need us to start a family. Like, it'll be all right. And you see all the way down to the end of the episode how that was starting to make her have to make a critical choice. That before, you know, she was trying to help the family. Then it went to, okay, well, I think I can try to make some change here. Down to now, okay, now I have to make myself be committed to this family by blood, by having a child. Like, nah, bro, things got to change. If I'm bringing a child into this world, this family got to change, and I'm gonna do something about it, kind of thing.
That whole horrible conversation in the basement.
That was
her,
crazy.
Dan, and Samuel.
I didn't know what was about to happen through that, honestly.
Because Samuel was very clear in, you're a woman and you're out of your place.
Mm-hmm.
But Brenda's so independent because that's the way she was raised in this same religion.
Right.
That she just is like, no, that's not right. This is what I should do. He needs me. I need to do this. And it was, you need to be in your place. And there's weird because Dan didn't do a lot of talking there.
No, he didn't.
Samuel did, though. Lots of it. And you saw the anger that came across him in that scene. So then you transport that back to when they're talking about her being dead. And him telling him, like, no, it's a list. And they said, well, Brenda been on a list? And the look on his face when he said that was almost yes. Yeah. Even when he asked, did he kill Brenda? When he said, how is it that you slit her neck and your 15-month-old niece's neck? Sammy's reaction was that he did it. Yeah.
Definitely some good acting from Macaulay Culkin's younger brother. I can't remember what his first name is.
Roy?
Is it Roy?
Yes, Roy Culkin.
Yeah, he did a really good job in the scenes that they gave him. Because even just the way that the brothers were listening to him, like, I forget which brother was just so off-put by it. I think it was Robert. Because Alan kind of was like, man, look, I'm just going to stay in myself. But Robert was like listening to it. And it was like, Pyrie knew he had to go and close the door and get them to speed this up because it was really putting him in a bad space. Because it was almost the opposite reaction for Robert. Like, Robert's like, nah, homie, like, I can't do this. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much the whole recap of the whole episode. Is there anything else we missed? I think we went through everything.
I think we did. We touched on a multitude of things. We still just don't know if that was his pastor, preacher, or what is the correct term. That's something I need to look into. What is the
For
correct
some reason,
term?
I thought he said deacon, but
It could have been, but I mean, again, so many different religions, so many different names for the
right.
leaders in said churches. It's just finding out which one it is. But no matter what, it was just about their conversation
Mm-hmm.
more than anything that it revealed a lot.
Yeah,
I think it revealed a lot of questions that is already popping up in him about his religion.
right.
Sometimes things not said carry a heck of a lot more weight than things that are said.
Exactly. Because I think it'd been different even if the pastor kind of was like, "Look, I am a devout member. I've been, man the cloth for X amount of years. This is a subsect. This is something that is ingrained in what we initially believed, but this is what we believe in now. We believe in not, casting the first stone. We believe in not, striking or killing anybody." Like, he didn't even go into any of that. He was just like, "Look, bro, stay out of it." And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes. And again, I don't know where it's actually going to go because I don't know the history. But the fact that this is all based on a true story is interesting to me.
1,000% so.
It's very interesting to me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now at least I got it. The Laffertys are part of the school of the prophets. Okay. Okay.
Interesting.
Which, once you understand that, then you kind of understand Samuel's rant when they're at the cabin.
Well, so this is the other thing. From the last episode, we saw, these persons that are in beards, they've been putting out a lot of gunfire out in the woods, man. And coming from that episode to this one, we were kind of like, we didn't know if it was going to be a whole firefight. We didn't know. But I think that the fact that it was just Samuel there and then it was somebody else there, it's gonna elevate. It's gonna escalate pretty soon.
Hey, always go back to the beginning when Pyru walked up to it and they said, "Someone with beards." Right. That can't be anybody in our church.
Look, it's gonna get interesting. But this is the weird thing. At this point now, it's been 2 Laffertys got long beards.
That's what I mean. So again, it's all about the questioning of your religious beliefs. Are you following the right lead here? Are you behind something? Is this denomination closer to what you believe than the one you've been completely following this whole time?
Yeah, all I know is
welcome to the conflict.
Them Laffertys think they're the modern day Crusaders. We're gonna talk about it later though. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this review. We will be back. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell button. We will be doing another review for another great show on Showtime called The Man That Fell to Earth on episode 3 for that, as well as we have The Baby episode 3 that's going to be debuting later on as well. So we got a lot of different shows that we're covering, so make sure you go and check them all out. Make sure you have the post notifications on, and we'll be back. Peace, people. Filing out the top of I can see the skyline, 50 mile radius on my timeline.